I know there is in fact animals that we don't know about that live among us without us ever knowing their existence. Back in the 90s, when I was going down a long, steep cliff in a ravine in a smaller canyon, I came across a nest of something large. I'll spare you the boring details about my background, but I was traveling down the steep ravine in Northern California on a personal expedition I was doing. I did this kind of stuff all the time, so I knew how to go about it. I came across a small drop-off where I could catch my footing and could also catch my breath. If you walked about 10 feet to your right, it led to this tiny outcropping underneath the rock. From the top of the canyon, or where the cliff that I came from was, you would never be able to even see it because it's almost like looking directly down. It was directly under this outcropping that I saw this giant, well, what I would describe as nest. It looked like a bunch of old branches and other miscellaneous brush that was neatly placed in a large area, big enough for a grizzly bear to sleep in. My mind immediately went to bears, but I know bears don't make nests like this. They also usually make dens in caves, and this was in May. Bears would be out and about in the spring, so that could have been it. Also, there's no way a bear would be able to climb down this steep of a cliff and have no reason for a bear to make a den in this small outcropping. The only thing that makes sense in my mind, which I know sounds insane, is a pterodactyl. It definitely had to be something that can fly, but the nest just didn't make sense. It was so incredibly large that no known bird should live in it. I've been out in the wild enough, and I've seen hawks, falcons, eagles, and other large birds of prey, like even vultures, and I've seen the nests these things make. This nest, however, trumped all of them in size. It was very discernible as some sort of bird nest. Being very intrigued, I took my time and sought after any clues I could find. Any old eggshell fragments or possibly bones. Buried underneath the brush, I found a couple of old stag bones and a couple of doe skulls. There were a few femur bones here and there, and a few possible rib bones that came from either a cow or a deer, judging by the shape and size. I don't know about you, but I have no idea what birds eat on the remains of a cow or deer. I knew I was dealing with some sort of bird of prey, and after I found those bones, which looked to be very old by the way, maybe it wasn't a good idea that I stuck around as long as I did. I felt like I had a false sense of comfort, because the nest to me felt like it had been abandoned. There is some overgrowth coming from the sides, and brush and branches that the nest was made out of looked unkempt and messed up, and hadn't been laid in or laid on in some time. Then it dawned on me that I believe I discovered a nest of some unknown, large bird of prey. I don't know what kind, and I would certainly not want to meet it, but that's just what I believe. Again, I firmly believe that this is the nest that was no longer in use, but I didn't feel like it was appropriate to stick around longer, just in case I was wrong. With the environment around it, where the nest is and was, it created the perfect getaway hiding spot for whatever large bird made this nest here. No predators or any egg thieves would be able to reach it, and stayed far out of the eyesight or earsight of anyone happening to wander through the area. Had I not glanced over when I caught my footing, I would have gone right past it, down the ravine wall. During my time of expeditions and climbing up and down cliffs, I have found a lot of cool stuff, and this one is hands down the best one. Since you seem to be the expert on cryptids and possible unknown animals, you might have some insight as to what exactly I stumbled upon. I'm going to start this off and let you know that I'm not crazy. I know what I saw. There's no way anybody could hallucinate such a thing. I've already gotten ample disbelief from friends and family who chose not to believe my story, and I guess I can't blame them, having never seen what I did. That's okay though. I just accept that there's more out there than we know, and it's funny. I used to think that we've explored everything there is to explore on this planet, but I guess I was wrong. There are certain creatures that are really good at hiding, because otherwise we would all know about them by now, right? Almost 6 years ago, I was spending some time out in the bayous of Louisiana and western Florida, scouting out some great places to fish. I do all of my adventures soloing. I'm just a very independent person, and I like the solace of being alone. I guess in this case, it worked out against me, because had I had a witness with me, I feel like I would have been that much more credible. Oh well. I reached an open spot that was right near the ocean. The Gulf, actually. It was still very swampy, but you can kind of see the ocean from where I was. It was a spot where the swamp actually kind of opened up inland. I had hiked off the road for quite a few miles in this dense swamp. I didn't have any of my equipment with me, because I was just getting out of location, like I said, just seeing what was around the area. For those that aren't aware of the environment here, it's humid as hell, with alligators and insects everywhere. It can be extremely treacherous if you don't know your environment, and you become too prideful and arrogant. I was under the impression already that I was not in my safe zone, and I needed to tread very lightly. There's also poisonous snakes and other things out here that can kill you or hurt you. I guess you can say that is part of the thrill. Once I reached the open area that the swamp came in inland, I noticed there were quite a few alligators in the water, and a few hanging out on the embankment across from the swamp that I was at. I had to be extremely careful at traversing and treading where I was going. I didn't plan on going into the water at all, even if it only was knee-deep. I wasn't risking anything. I go past my side of the embankment and start to head towards the innermost part of the swamp that goes back into the direction north. As I'm heading in that direction towards the swamp, I hear a huge sound behind me, probably about 30 yards away. Whatever it was had to have been large, because I hear this large force coming down from the sky. It was the sound of wind being moved. It stopped me in my tracks, and I turned. This is what I saw, and I kid you not, I am not crazy. Plain as day, this massive bird, I don't know what you would call it, because I only saw it for about a second or two before it descended and ascended again. From the glimpse I got, it kind of looked like an eagle, but it was all black with white markings along its wings and back that I had never seen before. That's not what shook me. It was the sheer size and what it did that took my breath away. The wingspan on this monster had to have been easily 20 feet in length if it was standing on the ground, and I'm probably being conservative. This bird was probably 10 to 12 feet tall if standing. I mean it when I said this was a massive animal. It was so large that as it descended out into the sky, it made an audible noise. I turned and saw it descending right as I was about to go to the ground, and then I realized it was doing something. It had its sights set on this large alligator that was sitting right there on the embankment, on the opposite side that I was, near a large tree. It descended, and with its massive talons, grabbed this alligator in one swift motion, picked it up with its talons, and flew off, just like that. It was like watching a hawk grab a field mouse and then take off. It was nothing to this bird, or whatever it was. It didn't even look like the alligator that got grabbed had even any time to react. In just 1 second, it got scooped up and then gone. To give you some more detail about the environment, even though it was all bog and swamp, there was enough sky opening in this part of the swamp that the bird was easily able to navigate down from the sky into. It wasn't so thick and covered that it made it impossible or tough for this bird to fly out of. It was very open, with lots of sun coming through. The bird itself didn't make any noise like squawks or screams, kind of like what you'd expect, but it was moving so much faster, and so much so that it was audible. It's kind of like if you take a stick and start waving it really fast, you'll start hearing that whipping sound in the air. That's just from you moving around. It was kind of the same thing, if that makes any sense. It all happened so fast that I nearly soiled my pants as this happened. And that moment, I gave up any and all hope that I would find any remote fishing spot safely, and took off quickly back to my truck, parked a couple of miles in the direction I was heading. It really did terrify me, and it kind of stopped my adventuring out in places that I don't necessarily know too well. I don't know what it was. I don't know what kind of birds naturally live out in the swamp. Whatever this was, though, took down an alligator like it was nothing. And let me clarify this with you. The alligator that it grabbed wasn't a small 3-foot gator. This was a decent-sized 6 to 7 foot length adult alligator. I don't know if you'll believe my story, and I was even hesitant to write this up and send it to you, but I figured it's worth a shot. Sometimes I feel like it's a burden to keep this on me and not tell anybody about it. I've asked friends and family if they know of any large birds that live out in the swamps, or any birds that eat alligators, and I'm just responded to with strange looks. I still feel uncomfortable telling my story to people, in fear of rejection. I think I'll get over it eventually, and I know for me, typing this out to you and processing what happened is helping me work through it. It was just such a surreal experience. I don't think I'll ever fully process it all